Hi, listener. This is this is a difficult one for me, but I feel like it's important. So, yeah. This is about how I created division, how I contributed to it. Like my understanding of the importance of unity, I didn't always have that. Um and I There was a time when I was very much embroiled in the culture war, the there's this fear of the other side, essentially, a fear of what they will make of the world, a fear of what will happen. It's the same old story that's happened many a time, really. But you get it with, like, say, Protestants and Catholics in Ireland, for example. But what you got was essentially the left and right. Now, it's obviously a little more complicated to do that. It had to do with identities politics primarily, but also it's like economics as well. And you got it to do with, especially, I guess you could say, right wing economics and left wing economics, and between, um, between left, you could say, radical left, uh, social positions or identity politics, and the opposition to that. And I was solidly in the opposition to that. I I felt very threatened by identity politics, and I felt very threatened by the far left economically. I feared a revolution, and I was a libertarian. That was my perspective. Um, Very much pro free market. Uh, so I got in a lot of arguments. I was in a negative place at the time, and I got some sort of catharsis from those arguments. I mean, I try to have discussions. I I was trying to, as I saw it, be rational and logical and reasonable, but that was rationalization largely. I enjoyed the fight on some level, uh, and forgive me if what I'm about to say sounds self-flattering a little bit, but it's actually more of a criticism. Now, in a somewhat analytical way, I made extended systematic arguments against left-wing positions on identity politics and feminism, and, well, that's part of identity politics, and the economic left, um, especially the radical left, being very critical of it, basically saying that it is fundamentally flawed, and dangerous and based in negativity, and not appreciating where, not really empathizing with where they're coming from at all, and just treating it like it's stupid and malevolent, I guess you could say. I mean, sometimes I try to give it a fair shake, but I was very much very critical of it. Um, and but even though I was systematic about it, because I combined being systematic and to some extent making good cases about against things in certain ways, in, but I combined that with being incredibly obnoxious about it and not actually really being understanding about their perspective and treating them like they didn't really have anything valuable to say. I suppose that's a sort of gaslighty effect if you're being treated like there's no value in what you're saying, and that it's just garbage. Because the truth is actually usually an integration of both sides. It's the way Till Swan puts it on YouTube would be an and consciousness. Instead of it's one thing or another, it's find a way where it's one thing and the other thing, not a compromise between the two, not sacrificing a bit of one for the other, but in finding a way where they integrate together without any sacrifice. Right? I wasn't appreciating it in that way. I was too caught up in I wasn't accepting them and their position. I wasn't accepting where they're coming from. I was afraid and angry, I suppose. I was stuck in that fight or flight mentality. And a lot of this culture war and this sort of thing is very much about fight or flight and freeze, that sort of dynamic. And I somewhat saw the bigger picture. That's why I was trying to create my own theory to some extent or something. I know it sounds arrogant because it was arrogant. And I, in my, the way I did it, the way I was systematically attacking and deconstructing their positions and being very obnoxious about it, it made them feel threatened. So I imagine they couldn't, it was hard for them to see or accept the validity to the extent that there was validity in what I was saying, and or at least not accepting it. So that instead it just hurt them a lot, especially in the insofar as they knew I did have a point. Not to presume that, but insofar as, and in the cases where they knew I had a bit of a point, because they felt threatened, they couldn't accept it, so they rationalized it as my malevolence, and or whatever it is. They basically got hurt even more and rationalized that as all from me. And to be fair, I wasn't exactly communicating well. To be fair, what they were doing, what I was doing, is often the same thing, just in different ends. But I did it in a very deconstructy, analytical way. Not that there aren't people who are doing that from the other end, but the way I did it, I feel like it didn't contribute. And not just that, contribute well, but also not just that, I did it very doggedly. I didn't quit arguments when they derailed, things were derailed and went down. I kept on going and kept on going, always trying to get the last word, always trying to, never quitting, always not accepting anything less than their mind being changed to what I wanted them to believe. And there's a controllingness in that. Now, I'm not going to say, oh, I'm so sorry, I was a terrible person. Like, it's not something which I do feel I could have done a lot better. I'm not going to negate what I'm saying by saying other people did it. That's not really the point. It's more that given that I'm focusing on unity now, even though I've learned my lessons in many regards about the importance of unity and not getting stuck in fight or flight and all these arguments, I haven't really properly addressed, I feel, how much I was being divisive. I mean, I don't know, is hypocrisy something that applies in the present, or can you compare someone's past to their present positions and say they're hypocritical because of how they used to be? Maybe. I feel that this is something that I need to be clear about. I'm starting to understand where they're coming from. So suppose though these people on the radical left, they believe in identity politics and they believe in like radical left economic positions, and they're getting their position fundamentally disrespected and deconstructed, actually somewhat effectively, but in a way that shows no appreciation of any of the validity of where it's coming from at all. like it's stupid, like it's malevolent, like it's any sense they see in it is in their heads. And that basically they're the problem, right? I mean, the more cynical and frustrated I got about it, the more I got frustrated at cases where they've been uncharitable with me and others on the right or whatever, the more I got this impression of them that was very uncharitable. And so by the end, before I stopped engaging on Reddit, for example, I was being extremely uncharitable. I'm accusing them of dishonesty and all sorts of negative things. It was hypocritical, right? And not just that, I imagine it was greatly hurtful, right? Especially given that I wasn't quitting and just kept on going and going and going. It was creating this impression of, well, what happens when you get people who've been hurt to that extent? Now, it wasn't just me. There were other people on both sides, or more than two sides, but arguing with each other. But in that context of the culture war, what happens if a whole bunch of people find themselves, they talk about someone who's been doggedly doing that? Well, what I was doing. Is it possible that they talk and they actually try to get back at them? Now, and obviously, if they're caught up in fight or flight and negative emotions and different ideologies, and they feel threatened, and all that, then perhaps if they've been very hurt, greatly hurt, maybe they would actually do things to hurt that person. But what if that person, well, me, reacted very hurt and shocked by what they'd done and accused them of lots of things and suppose they'd violated privacy in such a way that they found out what I was saying in shock and hurt and got hurt by that. But because they were hurt, they felt like wanted to get back at me even more because of that. And that, and then I responded with even more. And what if it created a feedback loop of increasing pain? And the more people heard about it, or they were told about it, and were receptive to joining in the spectacle of the whole negative situation, the more people effectively got infected by that pain and that cycle of being hurt and then proactively joining with the other people to inflict pain and then getting hurt by angry responses to increasingly draconian actions to get back at this toxic person, right? Now, I might be, this is just my subjective experience is that in that way I was targeted. I'm not going to claim whether it was real or not, but I'm starting to understand why it happened and how I kind of caused this. I had in I kind of created them. I contributed to what they became, the the, the depths to which they fell to in terms of what they started doing to me and others. Now, I feel like I can't claim responsibility for the whole thing. That would be grandiosity. But I feel like I at least played a part in things. And it's my way of making sense of some of my experiences. And I feel like the more, it's not just that the more I reacted in pain and suffering to their doxing and the things, the ways they humiliated me and inflicted suffering. I mean, the way they did it, they must have felt it was justified and necessary. And I mean, if you feel threatened, if you're not able to empathize because of you're in a fight or flight mentality and different ideologies and stuff, which is understandable. Um, you might not see, you might not realize what you're not fully realize the suffering that you're causing on them to have, especially if they've got um, especially if they've got Asperger's and it hits them harder. Um, and or at least I do. And I mean, there's other things that aren't related to politics, but I'm not going to go into that. Things that probably don't help with the overall thing being messier. But the thing is, I feel like it's intensifying and spiraling because there's just back and forth an increasing amount of pain. Them inflicting it, me reacting and inadvertently inflicting it back. It doesn't matter if they only find out what I say through doxing. If I'm hurting them and causing them to do more in return, and then more people find out about it, which means more people hurt by me, which means more people join in and try to hurt me, and I get hurt more, and then I react more. It's just a downward spiral. And I think that some of them are traumatized by what they've done to me and by the pain they've seen me go through because of their actions, even if they don't really want to admit it. And I'm sorry for what I contributed to what they became. I mean, it's easy for me to say that they created a monster. No, I created a monster. I'm actually improving. I've come a long way, but I created a monster in a sense. Not sorry, I'm not saying you are or they are monsters, but the it's an this whole the whole thing that's happened, or at least that I perceive that's happened. I feel like I contributed to it, and it's this whole experience is part of where my understanding of the importance of unity comes from. I I know the importance of unity because I contributed to division. The very opposite of that. I I contributed to suffering and the culture war in general and how toxic it got overall. I I'm sorry to those on the radical left or believe in identity politics who my words have hurt. I feel like it's important for me to when I get caught up in how hurt I feel, I forget or don't pretty properly take heed of what it might be like on the receiving end, especially that I might be touching some raw nerves with some of the things I'm saying as well. In that, given what they've ended up doing to me, they probably know that some of the criticisms have some truth in it, but the way I'm putting it, it's just so, or the way I've been putting it, it's just been so so accusing. You could almost say demonizing, despite the irony of that's something that I've been feeling, that I've been experiencing, being demonized. But I suppose that's what politics gets like when it gets toxic. That's what division gets like. That's what the cabal want, right? You've seen the division, you've seen the conflict, divide and conquer. I've talked about this on my podcast already. It's a really serious issue. And it doesn't help when we actively engage in this. Um, and what I had to share about my subjective experiences about this. I hope it helps. And if any of the people, and if any of my haters hear this, I genuinely am sorry if I've hurt you. I really am. I really, I, I would, I focused too much on how I felt and didn't deal with how my suffering in healthy ways. And I just projected it back at people. It doesn't matter if I'm right that there's projection going, if people I'm being projected upon. If I'm projecting, I mean, it's a double standard, right? And I have been a hypocrite. So yeah, uh, and I can't say I've entirely let go of my pain or my resentment or even my anger or my hate, but I'm on that path, and yeah, I want to do my best to contribute towards unity and love in a universal sense, and I want to embody these things more, so that perhaps one day we will all do embody that to a full degree. So thank you if you listened to all of this. It was a very personal one, this episode. And thank you for listening, and bye for now.